Hello, my name is Tabitha Setari. I am a writer, activist, director, and performer, and I'm performing this piece in support of the social enterprise RDXL House. With all that is expected of man, must he be punished for dipping his toes into the pool of deregulation. Bound are his feet, now flippers, and still he is forced to stand and suffer. By way of daily tasks, he becomes the modern Sisyphus. There is no escape from the monotony. There is no aid offered to those who quell their own cries. To suffer in silence is to appear ordinary to any passerby. This man lives inside all of us, renting some and colonizing others. He depletes our natural resources and stays hidden like a mouse, only coming out at night, or when he's sick or in good company. He's come to learn that to go unseen is best for his longevity. A house with a pest will go unbought, he thinks, and thus he laces his fin-shaped boots and goes out for a stroll alone. For even without prying eyes to demean the disabled, we continue to march to convince ourselves. When a bodily function with high automasticity begins to fail, one may begin to question their outlook on survival. In my case, that nearly universal function was the act of chewing and swallowing food. Following a botched oral surgery, I was left with partial paralysis in my jaw. For 2 months, I was on a liquid diet. I faced a good amount of trouble when it came to exploring my new condition to friends and family, so for the most part, I kept quiet. There was a sense of embarrassment I carried into all interactions involving food. My sense of normalcy spiraled in a perpetual loop. If I did not eat, I would eventually die. If I ate, I believed I was going to die. I had never encountered another person who suffered from the same symptoms that I faced. I felt as though I was no longer human. I had listened to tragic stories involving commonly known eating disorders, but none of them fit the bill. I was not weary of consumption. I physically could not partake in it. Never before had I met or heard of another person who consistently choked at mealtime and had such difficulty with chewing and swallowing. Until this moment, I believed these functions to be universal and unwavering. Now that I had discovered that they were not, I questioned if I would survive long enough to unearth the solution to my condition. Around the time my mom turned 45, she began to suffer from some mobility issues. Her legs would go numb after sitting for too long. When standing, she would often need assistance, and as she walked, she would stumble. My mother, like the man, was forced to stand and suffer. I'm gonna do that line one more time because okay. My mother, like the man, was forced to stand and suffer, though her boots were shaped like yours and mine. While growing up, I never realized that these quirks were in actuality abnormalities. I thought that this experience was one that all mothers went through. I soon discovered that this was not the case. Around okay, starting up from that one line.
You got this one.
Okay. Around the 8-month mark after my oral surgery, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was trembling on the other line. She questioned me incessantly about my current state of being. I was not living with my parents at the height of my sickness, so they only saw my condition worsening through pictures I'd post online. After viewing one particular video that I had shared, she thought it was time to address the situation head on. "Are you doing hard drugs?" she asked me. The question took me by surprise. "No," I responded, which was the truth. She was crying at this point, thinking that only someone abusing drugs could look or act in the manner I was exhibiting. I responded defensively, still maintaining my guard in relation to my actual issues I was facing. Finally, I broke down and spilled all that I had kept bottled up for the previous 8 months. I revealed to her that I hadn't been eating since my surgery, how alone I felt through all of this, and that finding a solution to my condition was not something I could foresee in the near future. "No one understands what I'm going through," I said. I feel as though I'm broken." "How do you think I feel?" she responded. In that moment, I saw my mother and I as two sides of the same coin. Two women stuck and struggling, desperate for a way out of situations we wanted so badly to make disappear. Although we were not physically together at the time, it felt as though we had traveled through our phones and were holding each other tight as we confessed our harrowing stories. I still never met someone who experienced the same issues I was facing, but somehow, I'd always known someone who knew what it is like to struggle against an incurable condition that plagued not only the body, but the mind as well. After nearly a year of not consuming solid food, I was driven, in part thanks to my mom, to finally seeking help for my disordered eating. I got diagnosed with avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, also known as ARFID, and through meetings with a behavioral specialist, appointments with a nutritionist, medication, speech and swallow therapy, and exposure therapy, I finally started eating solid food again. I'm still not back to where I was before my botched oral surgery, but I continue to improve every day. I spent months preparing for my death when I should have been preparing to live fully again. It is not necessary to suffer silently when help is only a call away. To function differently than others is not a curse, but instead a cause for connection. Without mutual deviation, understanding becomes difficult. Deregulation is as inherent to the human condition as highly automatic bodily functions are. They are opposing truths that exist simultaneously and cannot be classed without the other. They are each intrinsic to human nature and allow for the maturation of human nurture. I need not walk in your fin-shaped boots to see the struggles you face. We need only trek together.
Tabitha Setari. Did I say your last name right?
Yes.
Oh my god, and you know why? Because Tabitha is a special one. Everybody that's been on here is special. But Tabitha and I met, actually it's crazy, we only met in person in October. Yeah. But it felt like I met you before because we've been writing a TV show together for 4 months.
Yeah, since August.
Since August. Yeah. So it's about to be 4 months at the end of December. So like in 2 weeks.
It's
right.
crazy.
Time flies. And so I'm interested to know, first off, what's the name of the piece that you performed? And when thinking about your piece, like what was the process of writing it? Especially because it was a really close and personal thing that you experienced.
Well, the title of my piece is called Deregulated. And I wrote it in tandem with some classes that I've been taking at the City College of New York, CUNY, shout out. I am double majoring in psychology and creative writing, and I'm double minoring in music and theater.
Crazy.
And so, we were tasked with writing a number of different types of essays and free write pieces and poetry, and so that was one of the lyric pieces that I had written in, correlated to the class that I was taking, which is writing workshop in prose. It's one of my favorite classes. And I kind of took some liberties. I made the piece a little bit longer. I cut some other things out, doing it here for you guys. But it's just one of my favorite things I've written. I love sharing very personal things. I don't really have any walls up in relation to letting people know about my personal life. So you can know all my little secrets. They're all kind of out in the open.
Okay, well, girl, I know I'm already following, girl. I'm a part of the fan club of the Tabitha Setari fan club. Setari. You know what?
You said it right the first
time. Exactly. It's a sick brain. But also, I think what's so interesting is that you're not just, you write in many different mediums, and I think that it's really cool when like a writer kind of champions one medium, but I also think it's so cool when like you see writers that like they don't hold any water in a specific area. Like they're just like, I'm gonna go wherever the wind takes me. So what has your journey like that been? Because like you do poems, you obviously you're a screenwriter like I mentioned before. Even I've seen one of your short films, and I know you've been doing films for a while. You do musical theater, so I know that you probably have some ideas for musicals you probably want to do in the future.
If I told you all of those, you'd be here for another hour maybe.
Listen, unfortunately all the time, girl, pay us and we will. Okay? But so I would love to just hear like, what was your journey like for your writing as well? And I think that that's an interesting kind of thing to hear. Also, your views on community. Where does community intersect with your writing? Where does community maybe come up in your writing piece?
Yeah, I definitely think that, dipping your toes into multiple different mediums is beneficial for any writer or artist in general. I think that you can only learn more, even if you don't really take to something quickly, or if it doesn't come super easily to you. Just experimenting with that format can really be beneficial to something that, say, you focus most of your time on. So I know working with different mediums has shown me different groups of people that kind of also practice those mediums, and then I get to work with them. I bounce my ideas off of them, and I will work on one piece and then I'll refer back to something else that I've written. So say I write some sort of essay and then I have a poem that I've written, and I kind of see how can I change one, and how does this influence something else that I've written, and it continuously, they just work together all the time. Same with the screenwriting that I do with you and with Karina. I don't know, getting to work in a group setting is just one of the best things ever. Like, I get to talk to you guys and hear what you have to say about something. How do you think?
So sorry, Lainey's here. I'm just gonna bring her in and then we're gonna continue.
No problem.
That weather we're having.
I know.
What was that? Oh, that must have been. That's crazy. I said, what? I literally was about to be like, what is that?
It's that dog, man.
It's that dog. I really thought, I didn't want to say it, but I really thought it was a dog. I was like, oh my god. Also, that it's crazy that time lapse. Oh.
Yeah. I remember where we left off.
Great, because you got that macaroni.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Prometheus, Lainey.
Oh, hey guys.
Nice to see
Hello.
you
Nice
again.
to see you.
We had more people, but then they had to leave.
No, that's so
or they
real.
finished filming. But
Can I sit here?
of course.
You got
Are you sure? Okay.
I don't think
Really
you-
quick, just because we have to finish the interview and then we'll do like proper introductions. Hasbury is Tabitha Hasbury Prometheus. Hasbury is the owner of the company and like the main story like word person. So you'll be meeting them. Prometheus is a good friend of mine, amazing poet.
Do introductions after.
You're right. I'm so sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it.
Right.
Amazing writer, friend of 11 years. Amazing poet. Amazing poet. Just liberator, educator of everything, all the things, journalist, and founder of the Others Collective.
I wish you did my introduction for me on
Okay, please. I thought you did fine, but Karina, of course, Karina.
like,
And us three are playwrights.
Oh.
And
I love that.
us three are poets, with including Hasbury.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why'd you say us?
just because I've seen both of your work. I haven't seen Hasbury's poetry before, but like I've seen their work.
Okay.
You're
So
only a poet.
Lainey's also a poet. Lainey's also a poet. Incredible.
Okay.
Met through Nuyorican. I'm so sorry. Let's go back to the interview. I love my friends.
Okay.
Okay.
So we were
Yeah.
talking about
We were talking about different mediums
Yes.
as well as the sense of community.
right.
So as I was saying, I feel as though working with, all different people, with people, I
Right.
guess is the way to say it. I'm saying go back to the different people. Give me 1 second. guys.
Well, I think I brought it up before in the writing room, like the fact that we all have such different perspectives is that.
Yeah, I definitely think having different that's kind of what I was trying to get at. We all come from different backgrounds. A lot of us have grown up in different areas as well, and
Right.
so we bring that influence with us when we come together. So someone has experience, say, with disability advocacy, and someone else has experience like with racial advocacy, like racial injustice.
Racial injustice.
Racial injustice, yeah. And so when two people come together that have different origins and different areas of know-how, it kind of can build a piece that encompasses all of that. And I think that that's really important to include voices from all different walks of life and all different levels of experience with certain things. And it definitely influences what I'm writing about in the screenwriting room, and then also influences what I'm writing about in my personal work as well, and other projects that I'm doing too. I take everything I've learned from the screenwriter's room, and I'm bringing that into everything else that I do too.
Oh my god, I love hearing that. And I mean, I guess especially since we're talking about it, I was gonna wait to ask you about it later, but what has your experience been like in this screenwriter's room? Which, just for context, we've been, for the last 4 months, like we briefly said earlier, been writing a TV show about, trying to think of the easiest way I could say it without like giving things away, but it's about like BIPOC and queer people at a conservatory, like trying to survive and getting pulled into colonialism's vicious teeth and getting thrown into some Goonies ass like
Some hijinks.
some hijinks, like some supernatural stuff,
Yeah.
like some crazy stuff. So, and you have been to a conservatory, your high school experience, which was really interesting because we have 3 of us that have collegiate conservatory experience. Then you two have you and Karina have conservatory experience for high school. And I've been like through like a theater program through high school and stuff like that, but like I think it's very different than what y'all went through. So how does that bleed in, especially because like being a part of a PWI is so important to the writer's room, and you said a little bit like there's been things that you've been able to kind of see and pull into other spaces. What do you feel like you learned most working with another group of people? Because it was my first time also working with a group of people. It was the second TV show I show ran, but my first writer's room I show ran, because the first TV show was unscripted. So I definitely also have, which I'll share another time with you, ideas of a lot of the things that I learned in the space. So what do you feel like you learned, like working in a group?
I've definitely learned a number of things, both how to take a step back from the writing that I'm doing and to also insert myself in it. So it sounds kind of like a contradiction, and it is, but it also isn't, which is also a contradiction. But, we take a step back in the sense that we're working all together. Even though we're all individually writing our own episodes, there's still a level of, coming together and saying, hey, what's working here, what's not working here? Is this going to add to the bigger plot, or is this taking away something? Am I doing something that kind of contradicts what another character that you've also written about is already doing? But then again, we get to insert parts of ourselves into it because again, we're writing from experience. I feel like that quote, write what you know. Every writer talks about that. Write what you know, and it's true. Like you should, and we do. And so that's something that's really incredible. Like, writing about an experience that I may have dabbled in, but I'm not currently living. I'm of course going to listen to someone who's currently walking in those shoes. If you are currently living as XYZ identity and this is something that you have full experience with, that you experience day in and day out, and you say, hey, this isn't really accurate to how I've lived it, of course I'm going to listen to you. And when you say, maybe add in this aspect or this aspect, and then I'm going to do that because I want it to be as realistic as possible and for as many people to be able to relate to it. But also, it doesn't have to be for as many people, but especially if I'm not a part of that group that I'm writing about, I want people from that group to be able to say, this is an accurate representation. Maybe I haven't lived that exact thing, but I know I have friends and family that have, or you can see where it comes from in real life, it's just a wonderful experience.
I agree, especially because we have such a diverse writer's room. Like, girl, I still can't get over that one of our writers, lives in, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but Colorado,
yeah.
And girl, they got mountain time out there. Did y'all know that? Mountain time? I literally, I'm not gonna lie, I literally Googled that after because I was like, what is that? And so finding out just information like that, I think it's very interesting. It gives a lot of insight on how America's very different all over.
Yeah.
You
can go 2 blocks even in New York, and
yeah.
It's extremely different, groups of people living there, and even, some places they're really hilly, and that affects the people that live there. Other places it's flat, and they have parks, and all these things influence how you live in your day-to-day.
And you're from Queens, right?
I am from Queens.
Queens. Okay, awesome. And so, even do you think that Queens in New York City has had an effect, an imprint on your artistry?
100%, yeah, 100%. I think growing up in the city and now living even closer to the heart of the city, it definitely impacts the way that I write and the way that I live. Queens is the most diverse borough out of all 5, and New York in general is an extremely diverse place. So I think getting to grow up with so many different lifestyles and people from different backgrounds around me, it's definitely shown me a lot. I'm trying to find a more concise way to say that, but it's hard to pinpoint into any one area. It's because I try foods that I wouldn't have if I lived, say, in even Jersey. If I moved over into Long Island or upstate,
you wouldn't.
I wouldn't have these experiences. I wouldn't know certain things that my friends have gone through that are not the same background as me. So they say, oh, this happened to me, and I'm like, I didn't know that that goes on, or I didn't know that this was a holiday, or I didn't know that this was even a type of food or something like that. It's so simple, but it opens your world. And I wish that more people around America and around the world have that kind of experience, but you really only find that in New York City, and especially in Queens. I mean, Karina's from Queens too. It's a very, very diverse area. Even just going to elementary school or middle school, you realize it's we're all one and the same, but we all have our differences too. But that's what makes us beautiful, getting to connect and share those things with others.
Right.
And so growing up in that has just been, it's just amazing. It's the best.
I love to hear that. And I think one of my final questions is, so for this space of our media house, right? You've worked with us for a little bit. We're trying to do platforming different marginalized people, specifically focusing on people of people that are BIPOC, people that are queer, people the global majority. But why do you think that spaces like that are so important, especially spaces that don't just prioritize profit? They prioritize even I was reading about community-based business models, which we are Lord, I'm blanking on it, a social enterprise. We're a social enterprise, which I had never known what that was before pursuing this. And in a social enterprise, you literally put the metrics of not just, okay, how much money have we made, but what effect have we had on what communities? So why do you think that is important, especially in today's time?
I think we often see caricatures in media. A lot of times it's not a caricature, but especially dating back, if you go back 50 years, 20 years, even today we see media that pulls from like falsities or assumptions or stereotypes, and I don't really like that. I think a lot of people could say that's not, you know, the best thing in the world, like even dating as far back as minstrelsy and blackface, and then going to, you know, like the gay and lesbian stereotype in writing where, okay, you can write about a gay character, but they have to die by the end of it, because we don't want to, you know, we don't want to condone, we have to condemn. And I think that that's a very difficult thing to work with that still influences media made today, where you'll still see someone coming out with a play and then, you know, it focuses on a gay character and they don't realize that this trope, you know, the gay character may suffer a lot by the end, they may not have a happy ending, but that's something that's been written in to so much media and said this is what you have to do for it to get printed. And then it still carries on as it influences media today. So I think working with, what did you say was exactly? What was the name? See, now I'm blanking.
The name of our production company?
No,
or the
no.
social enterprise?
A social enterprise. Working within a social enterprise that is for and by voices of people belonging to these various communities, it helps us move away from those tropes that have kind of been plaguing all these different communities for the longest time. You're less likely to, you know, write in something that is based off of a stereotype, or write in something that is a commonly seen trope that is just like, oh yeah, it's comfortable for our predominantly, you know, white male, middle-aged, you know, all those different demographics that people tend to write for, and it's comfortable for them. We're not trying to make this comfortable, we're trying to make it realistic, and we're trying to make it from the heart and from our own experiences, and I think that that's something that we don't see today. There's stuff that mirrors that to an extent, but there's a lot more stuff that doesn't, not even close.
Right.
And so I think coming from the voices that live it, or should be the voices that tell it, and it should also be a portion of the voices that consume it, but I think everyone should be consuming it. Not everyone is from Queens, not everyone's from New York City. They don't see this in their day-to-day, and I think more people need to be educated. And I don't think it's any marginalized person's job to be doing the educating, but just by participating in creating artwork, it's something that we're passionate about, and then someone else may say, hey, this looks interesting, and click on it, and then even just by enjoying our art, they're still getting educated. So in a way, it's like we're helping in that way while still not being forced to do said educating for these people. So, you know, I think it's a win-win on both sides.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for a number of other reasons, but that's definitely one of the main ones.
Yeah, because even I think about the fact that this is your first time writing an hour-long drama, right?
Yeah, something this long.
Right. So I think the only person, and there's only been one person in the writer's room that had wrote an hour-long before.
Mm-hmm.
Samia didn't even know that like she could be a screenwriter fully. Like she was very like in academic writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about like if spaces like this weren't created, I would have never gotten to read like when Bond wrote that thing the first time, and that was Bond's first time writing a screenplay.
Incredible.
And it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was wrote in 2 different languages. I was like, this is insane. Like,
Yeah.
what? So I think that's why I really appreciate it, and it's really interesting, really awesome to hear that that's also something that you recognize in those spaces. And I guess my last question would be, why would you recommend somebody else to not just donate? Because, you know, yeah, you can like send $5 somewhere, but it's just when you get to live in community with people, especially in the spaces that in which you know you support, quote unquote, you support. I think there's so much that you can gain, and I'd be interested to hear from you. Like, why do you think that other people should be coming out and like trying to live in community with not just us, you know, as RDXL House, but also other media companies that are platforming marginalized artists and are trying to give them a voice to not just for media but like journalism, like news, like information passing, should be platforming those marginalized voices.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's a very important thing to be engaging in, whether or not you have a marginalized voice or not. If you're a part of a marginalized community, of course you should be tuning in. But even if you're not part of a marginalized community, it's to then become acquainted with said community, to not see them as an outsider to yourself, I guess. Again, living in America, people call it the melting pot. I don't love that term at all, but in that sense, there are so many different cultures that go on in America, and I think you should be in tune and akin to the different cultures that you will encounter inevitably you know, even if you're living in the South or you're living up in Mountain Time and you don't really encounter so many people outside of your own, say, race, religion, you know, your gender or sexual demographic, it's important to, you know, become accustomed to said voices, and it's important to share them. You know, every day you know, technology is advancing, and with technology, you get exposed to all different people of all different backgrounds, and some people don't take very kindly to that, and I think it's something that definitely needs to be worked on and changed. And again, it's not the job of people within marginalized communities to be saying, hey, we should change this, and we should be the only ones working to change this. It takes both sides, and so to naturally consume the media and the voices of marginalized communities would definitely be a step up, and it would be a step in the right direction for people outside of them, or say people who say, well, do we really need this? Like, I saw someone who may or may not be a part of a marginalized community on a TV show once, and I didn't, you know, they were okay. Like, so even an opinion like that, it's one that comes out of ignorance, and I think a lot of people are in their own bubble. So to kind of pop that bubble, even just slightly, just to kind of integrate it into the everyday, into media that they see consistently, or news that someone who isn't marginalized may see consistently, it will definitely help to open their eyes to the different types of experiences and say, hey, you know, I've been something like that, something similar at least, and it kind of humanizes everybody. It brings people back down to earth instead of their, you know, news cycle bubble that they may be in. Because again, the news is, you know, funded by, you know, we have, you know, like the left news and the right news, but it's all a lot of times funded by the same one big conglomerate. And so when you get out of that conglomerate and you say, hey, like, we're just people, and we want to tell our stories, and we want to tell our friends' stories and other, you know, stories, and it's just, I don't know how many times I can say stories, but it's just a matter of, you know, speaking because it's something that you want to say, and listening because it's something that you want to hear. And I think this is something that everyone should want to hear, and if they get even a little taste of it, they will continue coming back to hear it. So I think it's important to donate, or at least just tune in, you know.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Of
These were
course.
wonderful.
It's always been wonderful, okay? Oh my god, I literally want to hug you. But we'll wait until we end it. So, goodbye. Good
Bye.
riddance.